No, we'll move on from talking about swimsuits to talking about Neuralinks. I don't know if you guys have read
Neuralink.
anything up on it or know what it is, but our good friend Elon Musk. I say
Mm.
good friend because he's done some good things for the economy, but he has some controversial takes for sure. It doesn't take long to find one. If you want to discuss one, we can. But specifically, one of his companies, the Neuralink, it's a basically an implant that goes in your brain, um, a computer chip essentially. And how it works is it basically works as a Bluetooth device. So they've there are I think to date there are three human beings that have implants, and they're all three of them are quadriplegic, so they have no use of their limbs below their shoulders, or limited use. And anyway, they implanted this Neuralink in, and it basically Bluetooths their brain to certain devices, electronic devices. It could be
I
a
like that.
cell phone, could be a computer, and then they use basically not just eyesight, but that's essentially how it turns out. That's how they would type on a virtual keyboard, is using their eyesight to look or think about where they want to interact on the screen, and then it would
Yeah.
type the words. Uh, so I would say it's somewhat controversial, but I love the idea that the first guy that I researched, the first guy that got the implant was Noland Arbaugh, and he was a quadriplegic guy. His handle on Twitter is modded quad, uh, which is pretty funny because obviously he created the account after he got the implant. So I thought that was very. He's a pretty funny guy
Thing.
too.
So
Through
wait,
through listening
quadriplegic
to.
solved?
Yeah. Huh?
It's a real thing. Like he's a quadriplegic and then he can walk now.
No, he cannot walk.
Oh,
He is just able to now, with his brain, right? Like interact on a computer screen. He can play video games using his using this, again, this neural link that's linked to the computer, which is something that he couldn't do. And he even talks about that, where I don't know if you guys play like first person shooters, but he's
I
basically
do.
saying like he has a cheat code because it's not fair, because he has basically, like, there's no communication from his brain to his hand on the controller. It is literally real
Nothing
time,
real.
like, yeah,
I
real
love
time point and shoot. So he's like, I can't compete with the games individuals, so to speak, or the e games. Uh, but anyway, so he got modded, and he describes in a podcast with Joe Rogan, basically how it's changed his life. He's a lot happier. He has hope for the future. He
that. Yeah,
can do
I love
he
that.
can do simple things like type an email and type a text message, which he couldn't do before without assistance. So this is somebody that's been living life needing assistance for a very long time, and this has given him some sort of freedom from that. He still needs people to open doors for him and all that stuff, but at some point that Neuralink will be able to, if you have, I'm sure you guys have seen, a bunch of things about automated homes. Like, everything's automated. If it's automated, it
Yeah.
can be Bluetooth. So that Neuralink could essentially, connect that individual to that. And I mean, to go into a little bit more detail about the direction that it may go, they've done studies on pigs with the same Neuralink, where they have one implanted in the brain and they have one implanted below the waist for somebody that doesn't have use of their limbs, right? And that they've used they literally communicate with the pig and say, hey, if you want to eat, come in here and we'll do some tests with these two Neuralinks. And the pig will communicate back in words, in language that we understand, and it'll come and eat. And then while it's eating, like, its brain function is focusing on eating, they'll interact with the neural link that's in the brain and tell it to lift its, like, hind leg, and it'll alternate hind legs. And while it's eating, it lifts its hind legs up. and it's all that's being done through their brain. So at some point, it will probably be, as long as they have, the strength, right? You wouldn't be able to, get somebody to walk out of a wheelchair, right? Because I'm sure atropine, they wouldn't have the strength to actually do that. But once you go through rehab, essentially with those two Neuralinks talking to each other and telling your extremities what to do, that person would essentially more than likely be able to walk, right? So, I mean, cutting edge technology right now, of course, there's going to be some side effects, and there's going to be some naysayers about it and how it's going to affect people in the future. But there's no doubt that, like, I mean, sign me up, because this is also something. This is also something that if it's impacting your brain, then if I'm feeling sad or depressed, I could actually, because it's Bluetooth to your phone, right? You could Bluetooth to your phone and essentially tell it that you don't want to be sad anymore. I want to be happy, or I want to be aroused, or I want to be, like, it's just electronic stimulus in your brain that's telling your body to do these things. So the potential for that to happen, like, oh, I want you to kill somebody, could that also happen? I mean, sure. Again, there's going to be good and bad things about it. And just like anything else, when we created guns to protect ourselves, not to murder people, right? But like guns in the wrong hands are what hurt people, not guns in general. It's the people that hurt people. So I'll let you guys, if you want to talk about some things about this specifically, again, it's in it. There's like 30 more subjects that are potentially going to be implanted this year. Specifically, all the implants are done in Arizona. They do a bunch of testing. It's kind of cool how they do it, because they do functional brain mapping, and then they also do a functional MRI while you're interacting. And they essentially, if it's something that they need to do, especially for a quadriplegic, right, who can't use their hands and arm and legs, they actually check and map out the part of the brain that's not being used when they're telling them, hey, move your hand, move your leg, move your finger. And then they see that there's no action in the brain patterns. And then that's essentially where they implant the device so that they can communicate
That makes
with
sense.
them. Yeah.
So I think that I let me preface this by saying that I could see the clear medical benefits, like like you're talking quadriplegics. I could also see, hopefully, they may be able to do stuff with degenerative neurological disorders, like Parkinson's, or maybe even Alzheimer's or something. Okay, if you're able to do that, obviously, like, all for it. I think it's a great idea. But when you're talking about also being able to artificially manipulate your senses by pressing a button here and a button there and making that a positive thing, that scares the living shit out of me. Because I think that's a hop, skip, and a jump from being plugged into the Matrix. And like, you get Neo running around in the background. If you're having artificial, like, thoughts, and I mean, don't you also feel like that is more susceptible to, if you can be artificially motivated one way or another, artificially made depressed, or you can change your emotions artificially. You can also be manipulated or taken advantage of through that medium as well. You guys talk about Elon Musk. I'm still not convinced he's not a supervillain. Like this could all be a part of a master plan that ends up with all of us marching in line like robots. That's, as I've seen this movie, that's as likely an outcome as any. But I think it's slippery slope, but it really makes me nervous. But again, I could see the clear benefits from a medical standpoint. As an able-bodied American, far be it from me to see if someone who's a quadriplegic, I would do anything and everything possible to be able to live my life as normally as I can. So I would never begrudge a person from pursuing those, and I hope we continue to pursue that research. But God damn, that scares the hell out of me. Yeah, and it should scare the hell out of you too.
So when you think about, again, changing your emotional state, like if I'm sad and I am depressed and I don't want to be, what we do now is we're medicated, right? So how is taking the medication any different than not being on the medication, but telling my brain to not feel this way?
Because it's artificial. Right. I mean, I understand with the medicines, and I'm not necessarily speaking out in favor of them or against them. But if you're plugged into a computer and I can pull up my cell phone, that means there's this external things that can change my personality fundamentally, can influence the way I think, perhaps. If you can influence my emotions, you can influence my thinking. And if that's an external means by which you can do that, I mean, the sky's the limit terms and what they can do to compel me, or what somebody else can do to compel me.
Well,
What
I
are your
think
thoughts, Chip? Go ahead, Tim.
there's probably about 47 things that could be said about this right now. One of them is um, we don't even know the difference between the brain and the mind. There is somewhere in between there, the physical slips into the metaphysical, and we're not really sure where that is. And so when you're talking about emotions and feelings and things like that, are we saying my love for my daughter is oxytocin? And if I clip this little neuron right here, my love stops? Is this all that love is? It's a neurochemical. Um, so, but at the same time, clearly, if you lobotomize somebody, their personality disappears. And so, um, but I, the ethical conversation is not happening nearly as fast as the scientific achievements and breakthroughs, which is
It almost
always
never
a
does.
dangerous thing.
Yeah.
Because nobody knows what a mind is. We don't know, because you have to be able to capacitate things in a certain way to be able to describe it, the boundaries of it, what it's made of. And you can't do that in scientific terms. It's like, it's the old saying from Maine, you can't get there from here. It's just not, it is not a physical path. And so, but in a culture, in a society that is primarily sort of left-brained, technocratic, we assume that it's like the drunk looking for his keys, and he's looking for them under the spotlight, and the police comes up to him and asks, "Hey, did you lose your keys here?" He's like, "No, I left them over there. I lost them over there." "Well, why are you looking under the spotlight?" "Because this is where the light is." I was like, we just assume that um, if that whatever is worth knowing or needs to be known is kind of right here. This is the important stuff. But I think it's really the peripheral stuff, and the most important stuff is the metaphysical. And so one of the 47 things that can be said is uh, we don't know the powers with which we are messing with. And so I'm not saying, it shouldn't be done. Clearly, there are, if quadriplegics, if they can learn to walk through this Neuralink, fantastic. But how many things that are now are abused because they were initially associated with medical improvement? I mean, like marijuana, shrooms, those two things,
Painkillers, yeah.
painkillers. I mean,
Narcotics, yeah.
the list goes on and on. And so it's always a shoe-in if you say, well, this is going to help people. Well, that's how it starts. And it certainly does help people. But the long-term ramifications, there just is the ethical conversation is not nearly as robust as it needs to be, which is what scares me.
Yeah, I agree.
I agree too.
So how would we feel about, again, a Neuralink? Right now, currently, Neuralinks are only their focal point is one section of the brain. So like, if you had it installed in a certain area and it's only supposed to affect a certain area, then like it can access, let's say, my memory. So if I forgot my keys and lost my keys, I wouldn't be able to, the Neuralink wouldn't be able to help me essentially, find my keys or help me remember where I left my keys. But at some point that more than likely will be unlocked, and that will be a feature which makes sense. But again, we can talk about the medical side. Currently, the medical side, if I'm in pain, I take some narcotics. I take something that is a muscle relaxer or something that's a nerve block. And those drugs, essentially, which are only legal because I'm prescribed, illegal in a controlled drug, if we want to call it that. But if I cannot be on those drugs because those drugs have adverse conditions, and my brain can tell myself that I'm not in pain, and that pain goes away, then I see how that's extremely beneficial to anybody that has it, to include a soldier, for one, that is overseas and conducting wartime, activities, etc. I could also see how if we all have a Neuralink and I can talk to you without using words, just by looking at you and having a conversation with you without using words, I can see how that would be very beneficial, whether it comes to espionage, whether it comes to, just parents having a conversation without including their kids, so that they can't hear it. There are a lot of benefits, but there are also a lot of ways that it can be taken advantage of. That power, that thing can be taken advantage of and used to benefit people in ways that they want to. They see it being weaponized, so to speak.
It seems as though there's a sort of a fatalism wrapped up with a lot of these scientific movements, like the genetic movement and Neuralink and other things. And it's almost as if now that we have discovered the potentialities, there's almost this compulsive need to explore those potentialities and make them come to fruition. Crichton in Jurassic Park, that Malcolm character says, you were so obsessed to find out if you could, you didn't stop to think if you should.
Yeah.
But is there any stopping mechanism in place that is sturdy enough to halt the progress of man's endeavors?
No,
I don't know.
Well, because I think it's yin and yang, right? It's progressive and conservative. It's two different people, right? The people who are going to make these extreme scientific breakthroughs are not the ones that we necessarily want leading the morality debate. Those are two entirely different sects. So you're always going to have these competing groups of people that are trying to influence the will of the masses. So I think we need people who want to push limits. Like as a species, as a people, we need people that are willing to pursue the unknown, ask the questions why, pursue Neuralinks, but at the same time, we need a different group of people that are able to direct the why part. Like, why are we doing this, and what is the greater good? The problem is, how do you intersect? How do you get those two? And I think it's a microcosm from where we're at today as a society as well. Is I think in order to be conservative, you need a liberal, and in order to be liberal, you need a conservative. The problem, but we don't interface anymore. There's very few people in the middle, and we're not able to have these conversations. It's a dangerous place to be. It's a very dangerous place to be.
Yeah. So Chet, how do you feel about, like, if you're an owner of this? Let's put you in Elon Musk's shoes. You're an owner. You own this thing, and the government wants to come in and not regulate it, but they want to monitor it. You already pay taxes, right? The company is here in Austin, Texas, and then they do some things in Arizona, and I'm sure in other places. But so they pay taxes, right? But the government wants to intervene and get involved, and wants to make sure that you don't have an R&D or a section of the R&D program that's trying to weaponize this. Like, you're truly only using it to do medical, research and trying to make breakthroughs in the medical field and make people's lives better that essentially wouldn't have a good life unless they had this. So how would you feel if the government intervened in your company and wanted to do these things?
So you made a lot of assumptions in your intro, but yes, if I'm really trying to do the best I can and the government intervenes, fuck the government.
So you wouldn't let them?
What's that?
So you wouldn't let them come in and just have a liaison that does nothing but you give full access to? They can walk in this department, walk in that department.
we're not talking about dog food, right? We're talking about implants they're putting in people's heads. Somebody should be watching what we're doing. We can't put blind faith that, hey, trust me, bro, like this is going to help. Like somebody's got to be overseeing to see that they're doing what they're saying they're going to do, right?
So
There's got to be some sort of transparent process by which to gauge this.
Wally, in your argument just there, are you saying the oversight should be governmental?
I'm not necessarily saying governmental.
Okay,
but
off the cuff.
But I do think that if they're going to start implanting things into other people's body, we got to be damn sure they know what they're talking about.
Off the cuff, you have to make a tribunal of some sorts of people who are going to oversee Neuralinks. What are some types of people that you're going to have in this?
So I think that you need a cross section. I think you need people that understand the science of it and can really get down to the nitty gritty as far as the biology or the science, or right down to the finite details, that are smart enough to understand the science behind it and be able to ask these specific questions. I also think you need some sort of ethical leader, who are people, whether that be religious or whether that be political, whether that be elected, or vetted in some capacity. But I think you need a large cross section. I think that they set out initially, and it's wildly misguided now, but things like the FDA and things set out initially to do this and to be able to vet, to make sure we weren't shooting people full of horrible drugs. Now, obviously, they have no longer done their jobs, but I think that you need some group of people that are willing to break these down, because I don't think that businesses have our best interest. So if we're going to blindly believe corporations now, I don't know many that I could put faith into. I genuinely don't.
That'd be interesting to think of the different classes of individuals that you would need to have, or you would want to put in place on a board to kind of be civic overseers of something like Neuralink or a similar invasive technology.
Are you willing to just put blind faith into the company, into the CEO, and is that a better, and just hope that they're...
No.
Most consumers don't understand the science. I can't dive into the Neuralink and say
even if I were to say yes to an American company, like for example Elon Musk, even if I were to say yes, I would put blind faith in them, which I wouldn't. But if I would say that temporarily, it doesn't mean that some whack job in China or Russia isn't going to develop the same technology and use it for malintent. So no, it's wrought with ethical concerns and moral concerns. I brought this up to my students on Monday. We were talking about, I forget which strain we're on, but even something as simple as surgeries. Like, what's the difference? What criteria do you use to distinguish between a reconstructive surgery from a woman who had to get a mastectomy from breast cancer versus a breast augmentation of a perfectly healthy woman, or a mastectomy from a young woman who's attempting to trans to a male? What is the criteria you use to determine what kind of things you would say are good and allowable, and what kinds of things you would say, no, we shouldn't do this? Reconstructive surgery for a cleft palate is different than a breast augmentation, for example. If it is, how is it different? How do we make these distinctions? And what criteria or standard do we use that's above our opinions to be able to make those calls? So
I'm in favor of breast augmentations, just so we're clear. For the record, breast augmentations, don't ever want them to go away. But I do think I don't know, it's probably not government intervention, right? But it is probably something that needs to be created, where it's a branch that the government invests in to, again, the way this is, or the direction that this is potentially moving is like, you have a Neuralink implanted in your brain, and that brain controls a robotic arm because you had your arm blown off, or you were born without one, or whatever it is. And I mean, that's typically the way that it's going to go. And if that's the direction for sure that they're going, then I feel like the government should be involved to have a military contract on that side. And then again, there should be another panel, because are we using this because I'm giving you an arm and you technically are a soldier? Would we call that arm a weapon? Like potentially, yes, but we also don't want to use that. We don't want to use this implant as a weapon. We don't want to weaponize it per se. If that arm is pulling a trigger or punching somebody in the face, that's a little different. But weaponizing it, I think we all understand what we mean by weaponizing it, is in like creating a way to hack it and make it do what the individual doesn't want it to do. That's what we mean. But I think the government does need to create, again, or invest in that. And if that's the technology that in the way that it's going, then we're gonna invest in that at some point, because there's gonna be a need for it, right? If I get a robotic arm and I'm still cleared for duty, like, and I have a Neuralink, okay. Or if that changes, if that changes the way that the job that I can do, or now I need to always constantly walk around with a jamming device, something that will not allow somebody to actually hack my brain because I have a Neuralink, then that's the way that's probably the direction that the technology is going. But it's merely speculative at this point. But I like the ingenuity, and I like the fact that, again, this is another instance of technology and how it's designed to improve or make your life better and easier.
I don't know if you've heard of Neil Postman. He's was a cultural critic, a guy from New York. I think he died in like the early 90s. And one of the things that he suggested is whenever we are adopting a new technology, we need to ask 3 questions. One is, what problem is this new technology solving?
Yeah.
The second one is that really a problem? And then the third one is, what new problems will result of us solving this one problem? I think those are 3 fantastically grounded, sober-minded questions to help to just kind of put the brakes on. Even if you're still going to do this thing, just putting the brakes on, pumping the brakes a little bit, and considering, okay, I can't just be like a ready, fire, aim guy. I need to think through these things. What really is the problem here? Is my 10-year-old getting an iPhone? What's the problem that's solving? And, well, they want to be able to talk with their friends. Okay, well, is that really a problem at 10 years old?
Yeah.
And what kind of new problems might result from that problem being solved? Well, you've got social media, you've got distraction, you've got brain alterations because of the quick, it's just the way it short circuits the brain. So, I mean, all these things are extremely practical, and something along those lines, I think, should definitely be instituted.
No argument, but the problem is when you're coming up against something that could cost people their lives, right? How do you that ought to weigh into that conversation in some capacity? So if you have a technology that may have some long-term implications socially, or that it can save tens of thousands of people immediately, you're like, well, like, I don't know. I don't know the answer to that. And I don't necessarily know the right answer to that, but I think it's a worthy conversation. And I would be, if me or someone I loved could be saved by the technology, fuck it. We'll figure out the rest of it down the road. Like, I want to save this person's life, and I can't begrudge somebody that argument either. Yeah, because I would absolutely feel that way.
Yeah, no, I mean, again, that's the conundrum, right? Like, this technology will eventually be developed, and it will, more than likely, it can potentially stop Alzheimer's from happening. Alzheimer's is just your brain is not functioning, like it's not working. If to use like a cheap medical term, right? Like that's what happens in Alzheimer's. And if you have a device that can essentially make your brain continue to function, it's not that your brain doesn't function normally. It's that for whatever reason, electronic stimulus is not happening in your brain any longer. So, like, if a device can do that and save everybody, including the individual having to go through Alzheimer's, all of that heartache and just seeing somebody essentially turn into a different person and deteriorate in front of you, like, of course, I think we would all want that to happen for the people that we care about.
Yep.
I understand the neurological decay,
Yeah.
Yep.
electrical signal.
This is sort of one of my pet theories that it's fiction. We'll start off with that. I don't know if you're familiar with the story of the Tower of Babel in the book of Genesis.
Sure. Language.
What?
Language. Right?
Yeah.
Language.
So after the flood, God says, "Be fruitful and multiply, spread out on the earth." Mankind doesn't. They go to one place, the plains of Shinar, and they say, "Let us build a tower, and the top will be heaven." So this, even if, we'll just assume for the sake of argument, we'll just take this purely symbolically. So you have mankind coming together saying, "There's nothing that we cannot achieve. We are going to strive to build for ourselves unity and to sort of aspire to the heavens, become gods ourselves." It's essentially what that means. And you have an event where God says, "No, if there's nothing that they can't do, this is bad news. We need to scatter and disperse them." And so my pet theory is we are currently working ourselves towards another Babel event, and there will be a mass confusion of sorts, whatever that form that takes. And so that's my like crazy, weird, apocalyptic theory. I'm open for questions.
Where are we going to gather to build the tower?
What's that?
I want to know where we're going to gather to build the tower.
Yeah, well, I would say it's basically the metaverse, so to speak. It's online. It's the online world. Things like Neuralink, you can see like we're dissolving the boundaries of language, right?
Yeah.
Languages are not really a problem anymore for the layperson, right? And so technologies develop their own languages, which then can communicate. Distances are being shrunk by planes and different sorts of transportation and communications. So things coming to a head, so to speak, in a ziggurat formation.
Yeah.
And so I just think that's kind of fun, and I would love to write a book sometime about a fiction book about that happening.
I just read an article about it was about Elon Musk, and you guys saw all the new launch and Jeff Bezos's company, Blue Origin, I think it's called, just did their first launch, and they got up into orbit. They were saying that through his SpaceX company, they're going to be able to do transorbital flights or whatever it's called, where they can go from like Los Angeles to London in 32 minutes. You can go from New York to Los Angeles in 20 minutes. You can go Hong Kong to like in Germany in 35 minutes. Can you imagine that? Like, think about it's insane, and it's not far off. It's really not far off. Branson's company there, Virgin Atlantic, is about to develop a Mach 3 passenger jet. Like, Jesus Christ! Like, think about this. You're going to be able to go into orbit to be able to go to London and get there in 15 minutes. From anywhere in the world.
That's unbelievable.
Unbelievable. Yeah, and we're on the cusp of this. This is happening. It's happening right now. Did you watch his goddamn rocket land yesterday?
Catch it with chopsticks.
Fucking believable.
It's remarkable, isn't it?
I said it before, and I'll say it again. I'm not convinced he's not like an evil mastermind who's set to destroy humanity. But god damn it, if that isn't a cool thing to watch.
It is. It's remarkable. And I was just looking at that too. Yeah, it's like from Los Angeles to New York, 25 minutes.
25 minutes.
5 hour and 25-minute flight to a 25-minute flight. I wonder how much that ticket costs, though.
It's
What
like
do you think
everything
that
else.
ticket costs?
It'll probably cost $100,000 initially.
Yeah, then you give it
What's
a
it matter?
decade after that, and it's going to be $5,000.
Just print off more money. It doesn't fucking matter. Assign an arbitrary number to it. Well,
I wonder. I
well,
wonder how many his little ship can hold, or what he's projecting. Because I wonder, all it's going to take is for one to fail,
I
and how
love the
many.
competition. I love the competition between the two companies too. I think that's only good for us to have
It is.
Bezos versus Elon. I'm really
you know what I
excited
love?
for it.
You know what I love about Elon, is that so he's this genius, maybe a evil genius. I don't know, but he's at least a genius. And but at the same time, he's also really juvenile.
Yes, he is.
Like, did you know he is legit like the best Diablo player on the planet?
I've heard that somewhere.
Not
He was
like
also
pretty
Quake
good.
Quake 3 as well. Quake 3.
He's the richest man on the planet, the most innovative, and he's really good at a video game better than anybody else. And the fact that he do you know the story about why the rocket shaped as it is? It's
No.
because they were doing a walkthrough and they were showing them the specs of this rocket,
I did hear
and
that. Yeah.
and he said it needs to be more pointy. And they're like, pointy? He's like, yeah, it needs to be more pointy. He was quoting a movie, The Dictator, with Sacha Baron Cohen. It's a joke. Like it's this juvenile joke, and he just reformatted the shape of his spaceship because he thought it was funny.
I like that.
It is
Honestly.
funny, and I enjoy following him as well. I get concerned when he has been appointed to a governmental position overseeing a multitude of governmental decisions without having been elected in any meaningful manner. That scares me a little bit. And having so many personal interests in so many different ways with companies that interface with our government on a regular basis. Should a man like that, who hasn't divested himself in any meaningful way from his companies, be making decisions about where funding can or cannot go? That's a little concerning.
Well, it's not.
You should be concerned.
Just to clarify, it's not a governmental position. It's
Well,
he's not elected.
He's got undue influence over the current governmental decisions being made.
You're wrong, Molly. You're wrong. He just talks to the president and they have a drink. No big deal.
He's trying to make the government more efficient. I think he's the right man to do that. I mean, he literally made rockets to be recyclable or multiple use, like, which I'm sure nobody in NASA was even thinking about.
I mean, great, but you don't think he can use that influence to better his own position? And are you confident he won't do that?
Well, again, I feel like he is very much like Donald Trump in a sense where he doesn't need to because he has enough money and he can't be bought or influenced in that way. Could he use his influence to help himself? Potentially, sure. But that's like anybody in power, right?
Yeah, I worry that you underestimate the mentality of these billionaires in their quest and their greed for more. Like, I don't think there is enough. I don't think there's any off. I think they want to continue to gather wealth, gather power, gather influence. And again, he hasn't had to divest himself of any of his interests. He's still the head of a multitude of very important, very important businesses in our current country's like future. And he's got incredible influence over this current administration. If that's not an oligarchy, I don't know what the fuck is. Like, maybe I'm wrong.
No, you're not wrong, Molly. You're not wrong.
Well, I would disagree. I would agree with the fact that certainly can happen. Power tends to corrupt, as Lord Acton said, and but when you got someone like Musk has made it clear that his intention is for the progression of the human race as a whole, and I think that's what's funding his mental energies to go to Mars, for crying out loud, to be an interplanetary species. Now, of course, he's not a messiah figure. He's not, he probably. I mean, if we were to sit down, I was sure we would disagree about our morals. I mean, he's got like 7 kids. He works 90 hours a week. The math doesn't add up for him to be an effective father, right?
Right.
So, so certainly he is woefully deficient in some pretty serious categories.
So why do
And
you love
so,
him?
what's that?
You're a family man. So am I. That's the one thing we agree on. Family man. So why do you follow this guy?
Why do I follow this guy?
Yeah.
Well, what do you mean by follow him?
Like you look at him like he should be a leader. I don't see that, but you do.
Yeah, I don't. He is a leader.
Yes.
That's I don't think that's up for debate. And leaders can do things that are good or things that are bad based on whatever axioms that they hold, whatever presuppositions about what's good, what's true, um, are you are what is going to guide them into good or bad behaviors. And as far as I understand, Elon Musk, as much as a peon like me looking at someone through a screen can understand someone, he's guided by principles of freedom of speech, equality, progression of the human race, and those might not be my top 3, but I think those are decent top 3s that are general equity, principles of goodness, and so he's certainly not above doing bad things. I personally don't think he should buy TikTok, if that's something that's been tossed out there.
I thought Mr. Beast was buying TikTok. No.
Oh, I haven't heard that. I don't even know if it's up for sale.
If
It's
Elon Musk
going dark on
stands for
Sunday.
things you said he stands for, I love him.
My only issue is not that like he may be all those things, he may not. We need to have a system in place that people making our governmental decisions shouldn't be giant stakeholders in the businesses that would benefit the most from these decisions. Like we ought to have a system in place that can separate those two. And not only are we not looking at it from that perspective, but like we're embracing it, we're leaning into it. I think we're putting a lot of faith in a singular individual, and when you do that, I think you set yourself up for failure very frequently, because he is, as you said, has got grave deficiencies that I think in his personal life, as far as I don't know, man. I just think that we got to have a system in place that can separate the two.
We all have grave deficiencies in our lives. Like we got.
Yeah, right. I understand.
His internet cut out.
No, I'm here. I'm gonna be listening. We're having this crazy snowstorm right now, and I got to go pick up my daughter.
I'm so jealous.
Take care of your daughter, man.
No, man, we're going on the road. I'm gonna talk to you guys while I drive. I've just turned my camera off.
Don't.
Is that safe? Yeah, is that safe?
Oh yeah, man, it's safe.
I wish we had snowstorms. We have no snow around here.
Yeah, so
it's so depressing.
We don't. We no longer have snowstorms in New Hampshire.
So I think that I am concerned, obviously, with the Eli's power, but I also think that like the things that he's doing and the industries that he's doing it in, like it's groundbreaking, but I think it will create some competitiveness. So he'll through his ingenuity, it'll breed success from other people and bring them out from under,
Sure.
out of the shadows and into the spotlight. And I think that competitiveness will only, help multiple industries and the economy as well. Am I worried about?
Is he natural American? Like, was he born here?
No, I believe he was.
Oh, weird.
No, but I mean, again, I am worried. But also I like his arrogance. Am I worried about his arrogance? The same way I'm worried about like Donald Trump's arrogance, like creating World War III. But like, I think Elon's arrogance is like, you tell the dude that he can't do something, and he has the money and the influence. He's almost like Tony Stark. I mean, a modern day Tony Stark.
No, don't do that.
So it's really important.
Here's my point. He's not you, and you are not him.
I agree with everything you're saying about him. Like, I really, it's important to have visionary business leaders in this country. I'm not arguing that point at all. I love him as a business leader, and I love the vision he's selling. My concern is, and all of our concern should be his influence over our current governance. Like, we're putting a lot of faith. We're putting a lot of faith in a major stakeholder in our economy, and it has been my opinion in the recent history that the majority of our major business leaders don't have our best interests at heart. And while he says the right things, I think we should have a system in place where our billionaires aren't able to unduly influence the decisions of our government. I worry about that.
Are you worried about it like in a way that, like, during the expansion, how the railroad industry was creating a monopoly, like that kind of way, or what are we?
I think that, again, it's been my experience that the majority of the business leaders look out for their business, and they don't necessarily care as much about the consumer. And it certainly has become increasingly that way over the last few decades. I think that they're going to make decisions that benefit themselves, their companies, their bottom line, and they're not going to care as much about what's best for the environment, the people, the country. They're going to do what's best for themselves. That's my concern.
Well, I mean, I think we all share the same concerns. I wonder, again, when somebody stumbled upon methamphetamines and the benefits that they have to, again, on the pharmaceutical side, where a narcotic will stop you from having pain. Like, I mean, they had to introduce us to the side effects, and they had to introduce us to, the fear and the downside of becoming addicted to this substance, even though it does one thing. So, I mean, I would imagine, again, where I talked about the government getting involved, I don't know how that happens, but like, there is, at some point in time, there has to be some sort of government influence, because it's not just you that feels that way. Like that I'm sure there's a huge portion of the population that has a concern about a business owner having the most money in a free nation, and then the influence that they carry over their followers, over their businesses, and how that influence is being used. So yeah, I don't know what we do about that specifically, but
he was randomly giving out $1 million to people who would sign up for his pledge to vote for Trump. Like, let's call it like it is. Like, he had huge influence over this last election. I would argue his platform and his voice played as big a role as almost anything else in the election. Top 3, certainly. Yeah, maybe top 5.
Look, people in high places, they will say what he wants them to say because he will give them money. It's not difficult. It's not difficult to understand.
What news media outlet was saying that he was paying people $1 million to vote for Trump?
Pledge for America. You didn't. I mean, it wasn't.
I actually don't know.
It wasn't for voting for Trump. Okay, that might have been me kind of embellishing a little bit, but it was really that's what it was. And it wasn't
Carrie, who said, "You think Biden won this election?" Yeah. Okay. That mocking of the actual system was super, super destructive. You guys remember that?
You saw his whole pledge for America, right, Nate?
No, I didn't.
Where they would quote unquote randomly pick out people who signed this pledge and get $1 million.
Yeah.
When in fact they were vetted actors who signed a contract. Like, you didn't see any of this?
No.
Tim, did you see this?
Yeah. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
I'm not making this up, right? I mean, you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, I remember hearing that. I couldn't tell you what exactly it was for, but he was going to choose a winner every day who would get $1 million, but I don't remember for what.
It was for signing this pledge, and it was ultimately was mirroring the Trump campaign in their stances on various issues.
Carrie Lake
I
is her
think
name.
they called
Carrie Lake is her
the
name.
pledge. Carrie Lake, is that what it's called?
Carrie Lake is her name. She was the one who's like, "Oh, you think Biden actually beat Trump in this election? Yeah, okay." Like a middle schooler, like a fucking middle schooler.
I'm not sure if we're talking about the same thing, Chad.
No, we're not. We're not, Wally. I'm annoyed by that big time.
All right. I apologize for interjecting.
Well, yeah. So Neuralink, I think it's great. It has its ups and downs, and of course, anything that Elon Musk touches seems to turn to gold these days. But yeah, there's definitely some concern for the power and influence that he has over his businesses and the people that follow those.
I'm fine with his influence over the businesses. Like I want to make my point perfectly clear. I like what he's doing as a business leader. I worry that he's wearing too many hats. You should take one or two of them off.
Damn, that doesn't sound like corporate America to me.
It's weird.
Sounds like what I said to my
corporate
wife.
America intersects with our government. That's where I'm worried about. I like him as a business leader. He should not be influencing governmental decisions. He should not be the right hand of the president. I don't think, personally.
But he will, and he'll have influence.
He is.
He will fucking profit from everything, every day.
He is.
His decision making is like, how does it work for me?
Well,
Yeah.
And good for him, by the way. Good for him. He found a way to make it happen. Good for him.
well, one of the phrases I've heard recently that I like is "money is bullets." It's a tool, and how is he using those bullets? Is he using it to further free speech or human endeavors, things like that, or is he using it to put in a big Scrooge McDuck golden coin swimming pool and going for a dip every morning? And someone like Elon Musk, it seems to be more the first one. Of course, we're not inside of his head, but it seems like there's a lot of people. I think my in-laws are some of them, my sibling in-laws, but they perceive anyone who is a billionaire as innately immoral. It is innately immoral to be a billionaire. Do you guys think that's true, or
No?
No, I don't think it's innately immoral to be a billionaire. I think you're a billionaire by virtue of the work you put into making your money and all that, or you inherit it. I do not think it's innately immoral to be a billionaire.
No, do I.
I think their offspring are innately immoral.
They tend to make terrible choices.
They're lucky. They're not innately immoral. They're very lucky. But
They are very lucky. I say innately immoral just based off the fact that it's that saying, like, hard times create hard men.
Yeah.
Hard men create,
Hard times.
easy times. Easy times create weak men, and then so on. The cycle continues.
Yeah.
Like
It's all true. Like, argue with, please argue with that statement. You can't
argue with it?
Let's
Oh,
take
no.
it.
No, it's true. It's true. And I was about to say also, like, when we look back throughout history, like some of the most successful businesses now, and also some of the businesses that have been bailed out by the government have had success in World War II because they made bullets, or they made, their industrial their industry actually went into the war fighting effort, right? And they helped the government out, so to speak, and built tanks, or built a frame for a vehicle, built weapons, and throughout history, I mean, people have been, I won't say taking advantage of, but businesses have flourished off of helping the government as well as government influence. So, like,
Nate, we fucked this up. Wally, You look
Wow.
really good.
Thanks, buddy.
I like the
pretty
shirt. I like the necklace.
I
Everything.
don't like the Alabama shirt. I'm gonna
God
be
damn
honest.
it,
I don't like the
Nate.
Alabama.
Nate.
That's
Nate.
That's Mississippi, my friend.
Oh, even worse. They